And you might see kind of 3 levels of innovation. So I think you'll see social entrepreneurs, and kind of as you go down this list, things get more creative destruction-like, right? You're doing more destruction as you go down these 3 categories. So at this level, what I would call incremental change, you kind of have small-scale little steps of change. So you might say, you know, we want to, you know, change the, you know, a product or service a little bit so it's, you know, more appropriate to a beneficiary group or whatever, but we're not kind of tearing up the rule book, right? And then when you come down here, you get more challenging. So at the institutional level of change, you're kind of taking existing structures, like markets, if you will, and you're giving them quite a major spin. So an example of that would be mobile phones. I don't know if any of you have studied mobile phones, but you know, nowadays, mobile networks, you know, your Orange and Vodafone and the rest of them, pretty much make more than 50% of their income on texting. It's text and its transmissions via kind of SMS and MMS interactions. Now, the mobile phone, if you think about it, was never designed for that. It was designed to be a way of talking to people. And it was only really by accident that the networks learned that people were actually more interested in sending short messages to each other. And if you think of Twitter, it's built the whole industry on the same idea. But that was a disruption. That was saying a technology which is about letting people talk to each other can be used in a very different way. Now, for the social entrepreneurs, that's gone another stage. Does anybody know what, typically, you know, for example, in Kenya, how mobile phones are used in a quite different way from just communicating?
Sending money.
Yeah, and they've become mobile banks. So for many people particularly in Africa, it's very advanced in Africa, but it's also true in parts of Asia, the mobile phone has become a way of storing and spending money for people who are too poor to have access to a bank account. So imagine if you've got a family relative who's working abroad and wants to send you home money. At the moment, that's often having to be done through very expensive money transfer systems where the people who do the transfer charge you a big fee for getting the money back to your family in the home country. You can now increasingly do that by mobile phone, almost at no cost. They transmit money in credits to your phone, you can spend it in local shops with your phone. So it's a total transformation of the technology. And then the final thing is kind of disruptive. That's when you really do want to tear up the rule book and do something completely different. And to some degree that's where fair trade comes in, I think. But also things like microfinance. You might be familiar with this, the idea that you can give small loans to very poor people and they'll pay them back. Very disruptive idea. Most people thought in banking that the poor couldn't be trusted. Why would you possibly give $50 to somebody who's very poor? They're just going to run away and you'll never see it again. So we would never do that, was what banks said up until the sort of 70s and early 80s. Other people, like Grameen Bank in Bangladesh, said, well, hang on, no, actually, you know, the poor have got every reason to want to build small businesses because they're poor. And if you structure it properly, they will repay. And this was proved to be right. The poor actually have far better rates of repaying in microfinance than middle class or more wealthy people. And by proving that, you change the whole nature of banking. But that was really disruptive. Anyway, you get the point, hopefully. So we want innovation. And the final thing then, just on this little bit of shtick about what we think social entrepreneurship is this third piece, market orientation, this performance-driven attitude of social entrepreneurs. That they're interested in measuring their impact often is a big deal in this space. You go and talk to people, they say, we want to find ways we can really tell if we're making a difference. We don't just want to feel good because we're dealing with the homeless, so that makes us good people. We want to understand, well, in what ways are we really helping the homeless stop being homeless, or stop having drug problems, or stop having alcohol problems? And how can we measure that, and how can we make sure that we do it better next year? So it's not a conventional kind of charity model, which is to say, often, well, you know we're doing good because we give soup to poor people in the streets, so we must be good. And of course that is good, it's better than having no soup, right? But is that really helping them not come back for soup the next night, and the next night, and the next night? No, it's not necessarily doing that. So social entrepreneurs are interested in measuring their performance and trying to get better at what they're doing to solve problems. And that's a really important defining feature, I think. And also, they do look at different kinds of markets. So some of these people make money. The social enterprise part of this, they make money. So they're saying, we want to change the world in a good way, but we want to do it while we're also making some money. And that, is again a market orientation. But I would stress to you that I don't subscribe to the view that you have to make money in this space. That's just part of it. The social entrepreneurship space, of course, there are money-making organisations, but many are not, and that's fine. You shouldn't get worried about that. So, just kind of finally, and this is where we're going to segue into fair trade, you know, the way I see it anyway, is we've got a kind of spectrum. So we've got, on the one hand, the social enterprise stuff. This is the stuff that's typically making money. It's more like a business over here. So think of, you know, an interesting case where Grameen, I just mentioned them a minute ago, they're a big microfinance organisation in Bangladesh. They wanted to launch a mobile phone service in Bangladesh. So they did a joint venture. They built a joint venture partnership with a Norwegian telecoms company called Telenord to provide the expertise, if you like, and Grameen in Bangladesh provided kind of the on-the-ground networks. And together they built an amazingly successful mobile phone business and system in Bangladesh. And I can tell you, you know, when I've been in Bangladesh and been, you know, 300 miles from the capital, Dhaka, right in the middle of the villages up by the Ganges, I get better mobile phone reception there than I do in Oxford. And they have got a world-class, universal 3G mobile coverage in what is essentially still a very poor company because of the effectiveness of this partnership. And they make money. It's a money-making business. And then you kind of go right back across to the other extreme where you get organisations that are not there to make any kind of money, they're there to kind of change the world. So these are the social change people, the social movements people. You know, Greenpeace is the kind of classic example because, you know, relentlessly campaigning about the environment, you know, being thought to be absolutely crazy for years and years and years, suddenly everybody wakes up and goes, oh, those guys were right, weren't they? You know, after 30 years of saying they're tree-hugging loonies, suddenly people go, oh my God, yeah, the world is about to drown in the oceans rising. So they pushed and pushed and pushed for social change, and they eventually got some success. So we need to think, I think, of social entrepreneurship as being a whole bunch of organisations that somehow fit between businesses for a social purpose and pure sort of political organisations. I don't know if Tim would agree with this, but this is how we see it. And this is relevant, I think, to what I want to say in the last part of our conversation together about fair trade, because I think what's interesting about fair trade is they kind of try to do both.